I would say get rid of the word perfect. And my tip would be replace it with effective.
Oh.
Did it work? It doesn't have to be perfect to be effective. Welcome to the Hope and Hairspray podcast. I'm Rhodey Kate.
And I'm Kelly Osborne. Today, we will lead you on a journey of self-development and professional growth. You will be inspired to be the best version of who you were meant to be.
Let's jump in.
Hello. Welcome back. We are so excited you're here, especially very grateful that you're here because during the holidays, it can be super stressful, right? And so we are going to talk about that today. But also, even during times of you have a big celebration coming up, graduation, or those big milestones and holidays that can bring a lot of stress.
Sometimes that's just called family. What? I said that out loud. I'm sorry. But you know.
It is true. Yeah. So, Rhodey, what are you like when you get stressed during big celebration times?
So I have a sense of urgency that can be that can come out not so great. Like I'll be laser focused, tunnel focused, and so I can just get into getting it done. And I have that sort of sense of panic inside that definitely leaks out. So that's probably what more event happens. Like if I'm anxious about something and worry, that looks different. It comes out at different times. But certainly during the holiday, I'm thinking Thanksgiving Day. And just, trying to get everything in the oven, out of the oven, and I can get laser focused. So I had to do some things that I know because I can't really handle a lot of things coming at me at one time. And where do you put this? Where do you put that? And so now I have these little I write note cards. So I rip them up from my sister and I write down turkey, and that plate is the turkey plate, and that plate is the beans plate, because everyone you're probably natural at this with your background, but at that time,
trying to not laugh, but it's not going to happen.
I have my sister created this. We might have created some of it together, but she wrote it out every 10:15, 10:30, whatever you need to do by a timed agenda. So we get it out on at the same time. And then I added people are going to ask me and they want to help, which is great. But then I'm like, what? And so I wrote that out, and we worked that agenda really well. And there were times when we were like, what do we do next? I'm like, why aren't we looking at the agenda? And so now, it's kind of a family joke. Well,
sure.
What are we supposed to be doing? So that's what happens with me. What about you?
That reminded me of a story in our family. So when we get together for Thanksgiving, if it's just our kids and grandkids, it's 16.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So then if we add parents or siblings, then that number is pretty big. Mm-hmm. And I remember one year I had to work at one of our companies because that's just what was needed. They were serving a Thanksgiving dinner. And my husband had to take charge of the kitchen. And he then went, oh, I get it now.
Right,
wow, that is a lot for one person. Mm-hmm. So we've had to learn to delegate. Like we're getting ready to, we do a family trip with our kids over to Lake Michigan. And we tell them each pick a meal. Mm-hmm. So what we're both saying is, you go through a stressful time, and the key to it not being stressful again is adaptation. Yeah. What can we do differently? Yeah. And so that's what we're here to talk about. What can you do differently when you experience stress during holidays, celebration, big gatherings, right?
In the moment, like it'll be painful. It's the afterward. Go back and look what went wrong, what went well, what can we do differently? I usually start with what went well, what went wrong, and what we do differently. And we did. And then the other thing we did was the delegation, right? So my sister preps 2 or 3 days before. I mean, she's cooking like a fiend. My job, I have one job. It's to take it out of the refrigerator, several, I guess. Take it out of the refrigerator, put it in the oven, wherever it needs to be cooked, take it out and get it on the table. Like I don't cook it. People were like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I didn't cook anything. Mine is literally, I'm a runner. Yeah, I'm timer. I'm a runner. I'm the logistics. I just get it out there on the table because that was hard for her.
Okay.
That was hard for her. So
it's hard to do both.
Yeah, it's hard to do. It's hard to do everything. Let's ask for
hard
help.
to do everything.
And delegate and all those
Yeah.
things that sometimes we're difficult, we find difficult.
If not, so sometimes we talk about this, you light your own fires. When you don't and you keep doing it every year, you sow
That's a trend.
a seed of resentment. And sometimes, let's be honest,
Right.
that's why some of us hate holidays, because we don't make any changes to what is stressing us.
Right.
Right. And then you're like, oh my gosh, it's Thanksgiving. I have to go to the store. I have to buy.
Yeah.
Ask for help. Reevaluate. What are the stressors? Like your sister's like, I can make it all. I can prep for days.
And she thinks that's easy. I mean,
Great.
she thinks it's so easy, but
Great.
it's not.
So
for me.
figure that out.
Yeah.
Figure out where your tightest pinch is coming in and make an adjustment.
Right.
Right. So we're of course gonna give you some tips and tricks and things to make that a little easier. Right.
Some good ones too.
So I love that. About what else have you seen put into practice that can really flip that switch to view this time with some rose-colored glasses?
Oh.
Not just wine glasses, right? Like, what can you do? I remember one time somebody offered me a drink. I don't normally drink. And I'm like, wow, the holidays were super easier this time. It takes the edge off,
took the
right?
edge off for you. Yeah,
I'm not a big drinker,
Yeah.
but these two can do the
Right.
same thing. It's
Right.
like verbal wine, right?
I think you just coined verbal wine. I love it. Okay, we're going to write that down. Okay. Well, I think it's going in prepared, right? When you need to prepare. So I would say before the holiday season is take a minute before it starts to identify what's important to you for that season. What are the 3 things you absolutely, I mean, and they can be specific things. Well, I want to make sure that we go and do the tree lighting ceremony, right? There. Or I want to make sure that all the kids get time or, whatever. But stop and think, what are the, 3, maybe there's 5, but like if you had to pick, what do you want to make sure this happened? And this is something I did when I got married. We got married later, right? 40, 41. And the holidays come up and we do celebrate Christmas. And I was like, I need to know what's important to you on this day. And you need to understand what's important to me. And in our family, it's stockings. It's this big deal. And I'm like, if you just put candy in there, you have failed miserably. I'm like, one time, I think, someone put proper jewelry in there. I'm like, so you don't have to go that far. So I was able to get, but the point was I needed to say that this is what is important. And in the beginning of our marriage, I often bought something that I would like and I would sometimes give it to him. Or if we were in a store, I go, that would be a great example of something to go into my stocking. Can you see me doing this with Matt?
Just communicate it.
Yeah.
You communicate it.
Exactly.
What's important to you?
Right.
What would a great holiday look like for you?
Yep.
And then is it bad to pick out your own stocking stuffers? I mean, you just got to decide some things you just need to not die on every hill,
Did
right?
I just out the fact that stocking stuffers were done by, I hope no children. No children. This is not for children.
No, the big gifts are.
The big,
yeah,
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, but yeah, so there's a 2-parter right there. The prioritization, what's important to you. And then the next step of it is communicating, because things might not all work out the way you think. At least get what's important to you.
But also, if you did that when you're newly married, right? So also maybe doing that every 3 to 5 years, or at the end of a holiday.
Right.
I know always at our house, huge Thanksgiving dinner, and then it's very fresh when we're coming into Christmas, and I'm like, what do you guys want to do? And they're like, tacos. Just like grilled cheese. Like they saw Thanksgiving can be super chaotic. And then you had gifts at Christmas time. Right. So
another level.
What are our big rocks?
Yeah.
What's important? I remember going, because I love to host, doing too much. And it was like, that's not really important to us. Really? Like nobody even likes this dish, or...
And if you don't get the feedback, if you think it's important to you and you throw it out there and you're putting a lot of effort in there, that's great. If it's making you crazy, check in, like a little pressure test. Do you even like this thing? Do you not like this thing?
Well, and it's also, are you attaching strings to it? Oh,
or meaning, strings or meaning.
Cut the strings. Right.
Right.
Give freely. Mm-hmm. It will free you up. If you just give what you're doing, it will free you up.
Absolutely.
So, and we're going to dig a little bit more into communication.
Yeah. Well,
Or we're going to do it right now.
well, no, we can get into on the prioritization. This is really, I mean, this is just the way you do one, you do all. This is great when you're talking about goals at work or you're talking about goals in the family. We just did this for our if you take the English, holiday, a family holiday. And one of the things, what's important for you to do? And I had to ask my husband because it was my family holiday going back to where we used to live, right? So it was very centric. Like, what are the 3 things you really want to get done on this holiday? What do you want to see? And because everyone wants to see everything. What is the top 2? And then by the time you get into the top 2, then you have a full agenda. So it's a great prioritization, and dialoguing around that prioritization is really simple. It is so simple and so powerful.
It's so powerful. So in that communication, we're differentiating between internal communication, what you think everybody thinks is important, then the external, what are people telling you, good and bad. Like they could be giving you good feedback, like, Mom, we don't even like green bean casserole. And you're like, okay, cool, take it off the list. But also, are there any stressors being placed on you, like expectations?
Right.
That communication can help when you have a conversation with your family or just your partner. Like, what does that look like for you? What's important to you?
Yeah. I'm having an aha moment.
Please.
It's prioritization, like, feels internal. Like, I'm prioritizing what I want. When I vocalize it, people are like, yeah, we knew this all the time. And I'm like, thank you for just let me have my moment.
Humor her.
Yeah. But maybe there's one person that's also thinking this. That prioritization is something you do internally. When you share it with someone, that is expectations. And when you have to share expectations, that's the one thing people cannot do anywhere. They cannot read your mind.
They cannot.
They can't read your mind.
They cannot.
They cannot. So so I just had that shift in my, and I wanted to share that. Thank you. Keep going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So another one that we're going to share for you, a tip.
Yeah.
That might be really hard for perfectionists. Let's just say that right out of the gate. This one's going to be a difficult one, but maybe it'll help. Maybe it'll help. Okay. So this is from a leadership expert, Craig Groeschel. And he announced this. We were talking about it with our producer. It was 2-3 year. It was 5 years ago that we heard this concept, and it still comes up in our daily lives. And he had an acronym. It was GETMO. It was GETMO. Good enough to move on.
Okay, now all you perfectionists out there, including my niece, you guys just panicked. And our graphic designer, she's the same way. Like Debbie Lubers is this. I'm like, stop, Debbie. It's okay.
Yeah.
Everyone take a deep breath. You can do it. Say it again. What is it?
It's GETMO. GETMO. Good enough to move on.
Not everything has to be perfect, y'all.
No.
Does not have to be perfect.
No.
What's your objective? What are you trying to accomplish? GETMO.
Absolutely. This reminds me so much of wedding planning. We've had a few of those.
Yes, you have.
And I read the best article I think I've ever read when it came to wedding planning, because that's one day. We probably put pretty high stakes on that, that it should be perfect, right? They surveyed, this is great. They surveyed wedding guests after the ceremony, before the reception.
So like right
that day,
that pause between
that 2-hour pause.
Yeah.
They asked, did the bride's dress had sleeves or no sleeves?
I don't know.
80% of the people got it wrong.
80%. Wow.
Yeah.
Got it wrong.
Got it wrong. They asked what color the bridesmaids' dresses were. That was even higher percentage. Got it wrong.
So they just walked out. They just saw them walk down the aisle, or in our case, the gazebo, wherever you are. Oh,
yes.
Wow.
Did they have flowers? What was on the program? The list just went on and on. And so I tried this with my husband. Love does not test. Love does not test. I love him anyway. I love him regardless. But I said, didn't you love all the different colored dresses at our daughter and son-in-law's wedding? And he said, they were different colors. I was like, this is our daughter's wedding. Right?
And the man who's not colorblind, you got a couple days, he's not colorblind yet. So that's fair.
Did not know. And so that is such a valuable lesson that you think people will notice. They do not.
Right.
They just don't notice all the effort you might be putting into something.
So do it for yourself. If that color of the dress is important to you, if it's short,
that's important.
Do it for you.
That's right.
Don't be doing it for other people because it's probably not important for them.
Right.
Right.
It's so it's good enough to move on. Weddings, yes, that's a little bit hard to be good enough to move on. But just consider those statistics. If it's important for you, you do it for that day.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then cut the strings.
Right.
Because you just said it was important for you.
Right.
I remember my son in football, it was spaghetti night every Thursday night or something. And so we made him spaghetti dinner for the game the next night. But 1 out of every 4 nights was lasagna. And so I took the cheese and I made a football out of it and I put BC. And I remember my oldest son looked at me and goes, Mom, don't. Nobody cares. And you would think, I was just like, oh.
How creative. It's about me. It's a football. There's my
It was
school.
so freeing. Wow. I think of that so many times. Right. That helps me achieve Getmo.
Right. So you have an instant where is proven to you and you kind of go back to it. And I think that's a great recall to remind you. But again, if you said in the beginning, what's most important to you, right? Like we talk, and we're talking holiday stress, but any type of thing, going to dinner, like my husband knows the food can be adequate for me. I'm not a big, food's okay, but I want, that's not. It's not, Kelly. It's not a lot of you, but most people. But I want the atmosphere to be something. Like I just like the feel of space, and I like that. So anyway, the idea is what's important to you. But this perfect, man, I would say get rid of the word perfect. And my tip would be, replace it with effective.
Oh.
Did it work? It doesn't have to be perfect to be effective. It doesn't have to be perfect to be effective.
I like that.
Like being clear about what you're trying to do. But that Gitmo, I love it. I don't know why it just rolls off your tongue. I mean, I love it. Gitmo.
It's perfect.
Yeah. And I say that to me a lot. And I'm going to say, I'll have to tell him if I ever meet him, that I think that's actually been something that's helped me a lot in the last few years.
It's good enough.
That word Gitmo. Yeah.
It's good enough.
Now, I've always said, when is good enough good enough? I've heard that for a long time. And I did some research on it.
Really?
And that came from a pediatrician back in the day. Let me see what he is. Donald Winnicott or something. But in the 1950s, y'all. So we've been struggling about this for a long time. He introduced the concept of good enough, the good enough mother. And I don't know. I don't know more than that. So y'all are going to have to check him out, Donald Winnicott. But this idea was, it was better for the family. It was better for the child to be not a perfect mom. There was good enough involved in that. And I was like, so I haven't, literally this was new, so I need to go check him out. But a concept he introduced in 1950. So in my life, I've had people that said, is good enough good enough? Yeah. Move on.
Yeah.
Right.
Back to communicating, your internal communication. What are my big rocks?
Right.
What are the things that are super important to me? Communicating them to others, right? And it's not that you need to compromise. It's the power of and. We talk about that a lot. My 2, because you said it earlier. If everybody picks 2 things that are important, you're up to. In our family, we're up to 32.
My math isn't really good, but I can do that. I'm like absolutely 10 people, 2 each. That's a lot to do. So you have to adjust that. If it's just if it's just you and I. Well, we did this when we started together, and we sort of just did this the other day. It was like, what's important to you? What are your prioritizations? But yeah, and expectations, all of that. You know what? I think that would solve so much. The idea of being clear about what's important to you, expressing it to somebody else, and then agreeing that, okay, maybe you can't agree to all of those, but okay, let me narrow it down. This one's really important. Can you do this or not do this or whatever? And you're like, yeah, for you and our relations, absolutely, I can do that.
So if this resonates with you in any way, we would love for you to just give us a thumbs up, like it, shoot some comments over. We love comments. We had a comment the other day and it wasn't even, you thought it was really good. And I was like, I don't think it's that good.
And I'm
but
like,
we still invite those.
Yeah,
Like we
absolutely.
love to stay curious and hear about that.
Yeah.
So, and it's really easy to find us. You can find us on YouTube or Spotify or Apple or our website, hopeandhairspray.com, all spelled out, Hope and Hairspray. So these communication tips, these what's important to you. This is GETMO. Love that acronym. I'd love to see the ripple effects of that talk 5 years ago, because I know it's impacted my life for sure. So what else? Like, what happens when you don't do this?
Well, I really just think you can stress yourself out and become exhausted. And so there is something, actually my niece and I talk about this a lot. She does have some perfectionist issues, and she does actually work on it. And she's got this really interesting way she's approaching it, which I love. But as a result of that, I think something negative comes out, which is called decision fatigue. And like decision fatigue is a real thing. And so, what? No, it isn't?
I have no idea. You
have no idea what that is? Okay. For us
I'm sorry, I had to laugh.
What percentage of people, I don't know, you guys let me know, but it can be a real thing for people who maybe aren't as decisive as Kelly Osbourne, but for sure. But there is, and I had read a while ago about weddings, right? A woman was helping with her daughter's wedding, and she counted the number of decisions that they needed to make to do the invitations, and it was like 104. That's just one piece. Just one piece, right? So there's a lot of things going on in that. So to me, like just kind of being clear and understanding the negative aspect of it. If you're really going after perfectionism, then you've got a lot of decisions to make, and it's exhausting. Whether it's decision fatigue or just that perfectionism, it's hard, and it's probably hard because it's not attainable.
Yeah.
And then it's not only not attainable, then you're not real. It's not real. And then we kind of go down a whole nother rabbit hole, which sounds like another podcast. But from this perspective, I think it's something to. Yeah, it's something
Evaluate.
to really. It's kind of damaging. Like it's damaging. This, if you hold on to that, let it go. Make sure, be a perfectionist maybe part of the time. Maybe be a perfectionist in this area or that area.
Move the needle.
Yeah, not
just
all
start
areas.
To move the needle.
You can't do it. I think it's too much.
So I think a really good question to kind of wrap all this up as we're heading into this season. You can ask, if this season were to be successful, what would have happened? Just ask yourself that.
Yeah. What does success look
and
like?
Be real, internal, and then talk it with your small circle. Like, if this season were to be successful, what would it look like? I think you will learn some amazing things. And then you have permission to definitely enjoy this season.
And get rid of the green bean casserole.
Yeah, no more green bean casserole. It's fine with me. Thank you so much for watching today. We'll see you next time.